Hola class, how we doing? Let me see if I can be helpful here with questions from chapters 4 or 5. For future scenarios when there's 2 chapters, instead of doing this just long list of questions like this, maybe it's better to do something where you break your questions into chapter 4 questions and then chapter 5 questions. Okay? That said, let me see what I can do to be helpful. How can you transition from having an external sales force to an internal sales force without losing clients or accounts? This is a very, very tough shift. Going from internal to external is less of a tough shift because this is, the company already has all the accounts and all they're doing is passing them on to an external sales force. Here, the external sales force, who are not direct employees of the company, they have their own records. They might use different CRM systems or not use one at all. This is a much harder shift from external to internal. How can they do it without losing accounts? The only way that it's possible is if the internal, because even though the majority of the salespeople may be external, there's still some internal people. And if the internal people does not do a good enough job of keeping up with who the clients the external people are, or paperwork, memos, information about who the external salespeople are calling on, I'm not sure that this is so easy to do without losing some clients or some accounts. Really challenging. I'm not sure how this question was worded here. What is the difficult do we have when we use this finding the right? So, just real quick, I'm on page 112 in chapter 4. We're talking about the 6 C's of finding the right rep. Why is it so difficult when we use the 6 C's to find the right rep? Why? I'm assuming that's what's being asked. I mean, the sales representative is extremely important for B2B firms, particularly ones where the majority of the revenue comes in from the sales force. So you really do need to find a good fit between the representative that you're hiring and your firm and your products and your services. Hopefully, territory-wise, product-wise, industry-wise, all these things match up well for you. Hopefully the salesperson's had excellent performance. Hopefully the salesperson has lots of credibility, has lots of references, and lots of experience. The more the 6 C's that you can say yes, the better there's a fit between the representative you're hiring and your firm. For small business owners like a grocery shop, do you think the formal techniques are appropriate for sales forecasts? What would you suggest? How would you suggest regarding this issue? Well, for small businesses, whether it's a grocery shop or not, chances are you're going to steer more clear away from formal techniques like we discussed in Chapter 5. We use Chapter 5 when we have a lot more resources and a lot more people to coordinate. Some of these companies are talking about, manufacturing and raw materials and then the training the people for the new products and getting, That's not the case with a lot of small businesses. That's not the case with a grocery shop. Now, that said, you may not use the formal techniques, but I bet you use a ton of informal techniques. Grocery shop, you've seen the weather we've had here in the Northeast. The grocery shop, I'm sure, is doing some planning 2 to 3 to 4 weeks out. And they're not buying rock salt for March because, they need it for February, but not March. Small businesses do forecast, but they tend to be more shorter term. And because there are less resources that they need to coordinate, that's both time people, money. They can stay away from the more formal techniques. Question: With the movement away from focusing on products and towards customers, was there previously an emphasis on having a product's qualities determined by the market? Okay. Simply, an emphasis on groundbreaking innovative products which define the rest of the market. All right. To be honest with you, I'm not sure what's being asked here, but let me give this a stab. So we were shifting from products, stack it high and let it fly, and more towards customers, as we did throughout the 70s and the 80s into the early 90s. You know, the retailers and the manufacturers held all the power, really. The retailers were the only places you could buy stuff. The manufacturers, there were very few competitors out there. There were very few similar products out there. So the customers had to buy whatever was available and what was ever presented to them. Now the customers have a lot more information to search, a lot more choices, both in the number of companies making products and the number of products that exists. Then the customers have the information and they can have stronger power on their own to make decisions. So I don't know if it was just groundbreaking innovation that would say it. I think we have more macro trends going here. And now that, we've seen this monster shift from the 90s into the 2000s where the consumers really hold all the power. Are there certain types of products which are usually best sold via in-house personnel while others by external agents? So basically, in-house, internal sales force, external sales force. This is the way I'm reading this question. The more a product needs to have after-sales service, the better it is for internal. The more a product is a very complex sale where there needs to be a sales team, you got to go inside, in-house, internal sales force. The more that there's constant relationship between the company and the customers, i.e. for innovation, for product modification, the more you would use in-house personnel. External agents are great for stuff that basically doesn't need to be described. It's usually transactions and there's, maybe follow-up that did you get the product or not, but not follow-up that needs technical support. There's no teams. There's nothing along those lines. Toys, great for external agents. Aircraft engines, great for in-house personnel. The more complex, the better it is internal. Does the principle of CRM recommend a particular configuration in terms of the number of levels of management and size of span of control? No, it does not. CRM is more of a philosophy, in my opinion, and the philosophy is to retain existing customers. Service our existing customers, to get our existing customers to buy more as opposed to always go out and find new customers. Particular configuration in terms of number of levels of management? No, not at all. I mean, it's more that the information that comes into the CRM system actually gets acted upon. That inter-firm communication, the third component of market orientation. The numbers of management? No. Span of control? No, I don't think so. Please describe the territory design process. All right. This is a question. It's a little vague. It's a very large chunk of the chapter. I'm not sure what part of it you're asking. But sales territory design is a really big deal, and the whole purpose of territory design is to potentially reduce costs, increase efficiency, both in travel cost, gas, miles, hotel stays, airlines, and also time. The more the salesperson travels, the less they're making sales calls. If they're in a smaller geographical region, or a geographical region that's, more easily managed. Having a salesperson and they're, they have the East Coast and the West Coast, and a different salesperson has like, North Central, it doesn't work, because then there's too much back and forth of flying. I'm not sure that answers the question that you had here, but please let me know how I can be helpful there. Send me an email. Are subjective planning forecast methods more often used locally rather than applied to strategic level planning? The short answer is, I don't know, and the book doesn't necessarily tell us, one versus the other. So here's the subjective ones. Expectations. The sales force gives some kind of composite. The jury has some kind of expert opinion, executive opinion. You could use some kind of a Delphi technique, which uses a variety of sources. Objective ones usually is less of an opinion and more of a metric. Okay, think more statistics and stats. Okay, there is no one best method under all conditions. Multiple people use both. A lot of them involve what ifs, and how we go forward. Okay, so there really isn't one best method. I mean, it's really a function of what's best for your firm. I bet you there's decent sized firms, especially ones that are growing very fast, that do more subjective than objective. Just because you have a smaller set of leaders that are calling all the shots, and they're, if you look at Steve Jobs when he came back to Apple in 1997, I guarantee that they were subjective forecasting methods. Just because the company was in crisis, they needed to make decisions quickly, and, you had one or two or three people calling all the shots. Is there usually a close or proportional correlation between a territory's qualities of market potential, the level of profitability, the amount of work resource dedication needed to engage in the market, and the number of sales people needed? If so, does this then make the creation of distinct sales territories easier? Yes. I almost think you answered this question all by yourself. This was a good question. The more information you have, the better decisions you can make. So if we have a very good territory with, we know the potential and we know the number of sales, then all of a sudden it's easier for us to decide, okay, how are we going to align the sales force geographically speaking? Because we know the power of each one of these territories. We know the potential in each one of these territories. What process is utilized for determining quotas increase or decrease? How large and changes should be made, and does it vary by industry and situation? From personal experience, I kind of hate to say this, but the quotas are driven by the sales manager or the VP of sales. Sometimes it's the forecast that comes in, and then you start breaking that forecast into quarterly, monthly, and weekly goals, and that determines what the quota is. But the majority of the time, it's the sales manager. He or she sets a quota, and you try to attain it. And as you can see by our Valley case, our wine case that we're working on at the moment, quotas can cause a lot of problems within the sales force. How might a global company reorganize itself to maximize effectiveness with its most important customers? Hold on one sec. Well, if the company's global, they may be a global company. Does that mean they're in every continent, every country? By given where your potential sales are, or potential current customers are, that's a function of how if you have this CRM mentality, you have to be where your customers are and potential future customers will be. So you have to align, geographically speaking, with those goals in mind. It's still pretty rare for a global company to have a sales force organized specifically in one location. You may have a global company with headquarters in one location. You may have a global company with manufacturing in one or two locations. But if you have a global company, it is extremely, extremely rare to have all the salespeople based in one location. Salespeople are usually distributed throughout the world. Okay. Question specific to Chapter 4. Customers like telemarketing. Is this true? Usually telemarketers are despised. Is the book only referring to customer voluntary calling in for a toll-free number or repeat customers? What about telemarketing calling to advertise new products based on data simply from customer daily habits? Why has the view changed towards telemarketers? Does convenience play a role? As I said in the chapter video, our book is a B2B textbook. This is more Aircraft Engine and not Time Magazine subscriptions. When we talk about telemarketing in terms of the text, we're talking about inbound. Basically having a sales force that repeat purchases can be ordered, but this is very little outbound. This is very little calling someone directly. It doesn't work in a CRM mentality. It doesn't work there. You're developing long-term relationships, and the last thing you want to do is use the telephone to start to start a long-term relationship. Think about trying to find your significant other in life. Are you going to do that through dialing people randomly? No, of course not. Telemarketing, this is inbound. This is to help support a sales team. This is for companies to have a service center or a question and answer center. A lot of telemarketing that are inbound, that information gets put into a CRM system, which later gets dispersed to a particular salesperson, either because of product or geography or some reason why that lead, which came in through the phone, will get passed down and through. Would an employees at Apple be considered an inside sales force for the company, as they are divided into separate areas of expertise into the store? Okay, hold that thought for 1 second. So, when we're talking about Apple, Apple has both internal and external salespeople. Okay? Obviously, if you were to visit an Apple store, like this one right here, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the one on 5th Avenue in New York, because that's the glass cube with the glass spiral staircase going down to the lower level. So this is the one near FAO Schwarz. This is like 59th and 5th Avenue in Manhattan. But there are an awful lot of Apple resellers. You can call these external. So gosh. So if we look at this map here, we have Staples selling Apple stuff. They're a retailer, but they're external. I guess Radio Shack, Sprint, Target, Verizon Wireless, Walmart. I'm looking for these are all retailers. I'm looking for something more specific. There's a lot of store. The Zoom Shop. See, that's another retailer. I'm kind of surprised. A lot of times with Apple, Apple has the people in the retail store, the people at headquarters in California. They also have regional people all over the country. I know a buddy of mine who lives in, if I go to this map right here, this is Maple Shade. He's in charge of educational sales for Apple for the state of New Jersey. He is an Apple employee. He's an internal salesperson, and he's in charge of Apple sales for the state of New Jersey. Now, there are also computer stores. Let me hit pause for a second. There we go. Here's an example in the greater Philadelphia area. Those Apple guys. These guys have a computer repair shop. These would be external agents. This is something along those lines. You'll have a local computer store. They might have one or two different shops. They may sell Apple equipment. And guess what? These guys are primarily just repair, but there's a lot of repair and retail shops. But they're not affiliated directly with Apple. They're considered part of the external sales force. Okay? I hope that helps with that particular question. In a co-marketing alliance, how are the suppliers and salespeople compensated as part of that is supplied by the competitor may be inferior or more important part of the other? Does this cause any tension or confusion between suppliers? How is it determined who holds the primary communication with the customer? I'll tell you, with these right here, okay, this is not vague at all in the contracts. It's rarely ever vague, because this right here is how the contract is formed. You know, this can't be vague, otherwise there won't be a contract. So in a co-marketing alliance, you have it's easy to think about this as a retailer and a manufacturer. You know, the retailer provides the space, but the manufacturer provides the salespeople and the counters inside the space. And this is extremely common with high-end retailers such as Neiman Marcus, for instance. A lot of those cosmetics companies in Neiman Marcus, the high-end ones, those salespeople are not employed by Neiman Marcus. They are employed by the cosmetics company. Or Michael Kors, for instance. They have their own salespeople. What's the store in Manhattan, the famous one? Bergdorf's? Super high-end retailer. Yeah, most of the salespeople in that store are actually supplied by the manufacturers of the companies that are in that store. You know. So, you know, they're in there, and if you're the salesperson for Michael Kors and you're at the Michael Kors counter, you're selling Michael Kors stuff. You're probably not going to talk about anything else other than Michael Kors. And, you know, the salesperson wouldn't have, you know, to them it wouldn't be an inferior product because they chose to work for Michael Kors. Michael Kors told them that they have to be in the Neiman Marcus store in King of Prussia, PA. Or the Neiman Marcus store in Natick, Massachusetts. I hope that's helpful here. If you have any more questions, shoot me an email. Chapter 5. How do the three methods of determining sales force evolve with company size and growth? That's a great question. Hold on one second. Let me pull that up. So here we go. We have three different sales force size. Three things to help us determine sales force size. A breakdown method, a workload method, and the incremental method. I'm going to go through these because there was another question directly related to these and the difference between them. So let me just walk through them one more time. How do you determine number of sales personnel with the breakdown method? You have a forecast and you have historical records on productivity of salespeople. Good firms have this number. And based on the productivity number, whatever that variable of productivity is, you then determine the number of sales personnel. If the forecast went up 35% between year A and year B, went up 35%, and your salespeople are productive at a certain level, you'll be able to come up with a direct number to say, okay, given this new forecast, how many more people we need to add. Very straightforward, the breakdown method. Workload method. How many salespeople do we need? Well, based on the workload method, we have hours required to service a market. We might have very good metrics, right? that says, okay, given this geographical area, given the number of customers, given the travel time, given the service time, given the after sales, whatever, we may be able to then say, okay, our salespeople on average work 7.5 hours per day. Based on that, they're able to make certain number of calls, and they'll be able to reach this particular territory. And this tends to vary a little bit geography-wise, by the way. Based on the number of hours required and the number of hours needed, that's how many salespeople we're going to have. Incremental makes the most sense to me. It's very challenging to do, to be honest with you, is you basically keep adding salespeople until the decreased marginal returns. As we see here, somewhere between 2 and 3 salespeople is when you really hit it. 1, you're still good. 2, you're still good. As soon as you get to 3, now you're talking about... I have to sneeze. Okay. It may not be worth it. Look at the difference here in the drop. Look how much more the salesperson's adding. They can't add, the first person, 300, 250, 225, 200. We see the drop. We see the total additional profit. We know how much each salesperson costs. It's not worth it. All right, so let me go back to the question. How do the 3 methods of determining sales force size evolve with company size and growth? Well, it could be the case if you keep moving into new territories, you probably can't use some versus the other. If you do not have good data on hourly, then you probably can't use number 2. Oh, bummer. This is probably best within territories really, really well. This one you could guess at. This is probably great for new territories and expanding. And if you have a salesperson that, hey, look, we just added the 3rd salesperson, the decreasing marginal returns are below the market below the level for this particular market where we're not making any money, you could take that 3rd salesperson and move them out to another one. This might be better with new or expanding sales forecasts as well, because the increase in volume. It's not based on, and we know historically how productive salespeople are, given where they're stage at in their career. Like a rookie wouldn't be as productive as someone who's got 4 or 5 years more experience. So this might be easier to do. This might be easier to do for expanding. This one would be really hard to do for expanding marketplaces. With the right software, tracking sales results internally for sales analysts can be achieved. How can companies, particularly smaller ones on a limited budget, track themselves against competitors? Well, I don't think I have a good answer for you on this one, because, if it's small ones, you have small companies don't have a problem tracking themselves versus themselves, i.e. their own internal employees. There's great software stuff, and it's all done on mobile apps, iPad, iPhone, Android, all that great stuff. But the smaller a player you are and the more fragmented your industry, the less information you're going to have about competitors. The corner grocery store is probably not going to know that much about the other stores on their block. Where you get the information about competitors is, when you have very large industries, or there's some kind of a trade group that's tracking it, or it's a publicly traded company and you have analysts in Wall Street that are being paid to do this. But small businesses, any information from outside the company, industry specific, will be very difficult to get your hands on. With the development of technology, especially for wireless connected, can the role of information of sales management be influenced? With the development of technology, especially for wireless connected, can the role of information be influenced? To be honest with you, I'm not sure what we're asking there. I'm not sure which way do you mean be influenced. But I can tell you, as I just mentioned earlier, that iPad, Android, iPhone, these provide great, easy apps for sales managers to get information from their distributed, geographically speaking, sales force. Okay, this, I think I already hit question 1 here. Please review the bid. I think I already hit that one there. Oh, no, actually, this is the one that I just hit. Do specific industries use certain fail course methods more than others? No, not that I'm aware of, no. I really don't think that industries rely on one more than the other. That is to the best of my knowledge. I mean, I've seen a lot of different industries. I've seen a lot of examples with this. It's more something specific to the company, how much information they have, how many analysts they have, how much they use forecasting, so to speak. Please explain the 80-20 rule. Okay, here's our last question. The 80-20 rule, and this is straight from Wikipedia, it's also known as the Pareto principle, or Pareto efficiency, or Pareto optimality, you know. And this came from an economist, an Italian economist, that he found this phenomenon that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. Interestingly, even though this was some small, obscure paper, this 80-20 rule follows a power law of distribution. You know, and so many other industries follow. There's multiple different power laws, but this 80-20 one is one of them. And it follows a very consistent distribution that a lot of other things fall into this 80-20 rule. Now, when we talk about it in terms of this, our class, we're talking about 80% of your sales coming from 20% of your clients. That means you have a small number of clients, very big ones, that are responsible for almost all of your revenue. If this is the case, my students from last semester will say, this is a steep skew. Don't worry if you don't know what that means. Just know that this is more about the more you have 80-20, the more you have a small number of clients that are responsible for a large number of your sales, the more you need CRM. That's what I want you to remember. Okay, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy. If you have any questions, let me know, okay? Thanks.